Do you ever wonder what your purpose is? Do you even believe in purpose? Well, I do. At least, I think so. That being said, I don't believe it comes from something above us, something greater, but rather from within. I believe we can find or create it, build it brick by brick over a lifetime of toiling. Like an earthenware pot, we shape it, feed it, test it with fire, until at last the final product emerges. It is growth, mental and spiritual maturity, trial and error, mistakes and atonement that give way to a purpose. It's a daily uphill climb from which any one of us could fall. It's the desire in our veins to be so accomplished that we've arrived at the front door of contentment, and it's the forward motion that drives us to the end, at which point we knock. Very rarely does an aspiration, a goal, just fall into one's lap, fully complete. Instead, it usually begins as a seedling that, when nurtured, grows into a verdant forest. It sprouts from the tiniest of beginnings. The religious might say God provides purpose. They might say He destined each of us to a particular place, time, and ability. And maybe that's true. But that would place every flaw and failing onto His shoulders and not ours. If we didn't succeed in life, then, rationally, we could assume that was God's doing. It was His decision. But I must wonder, what if the opposite was true? If our purpose is built with our own hands, our own strife, and then maintained through our own will, then we bear the weight of the consequences it brings. The happiness and sadness are both ours to own. And if purpose crosses moral lines and dives headlong into the waters of atrocity, then, whether we understand or not, we must accept that our purpose was never a purpose at all, but that which we arrogantly and wrongly believed called us. And that makes me think, is there really such a thing as purpose? Or is there just desire, passion for the things we practice most often and perform best? If that's true, then purpose is just a label we give to the aspects of life that we include as part of our identity. There's nothing deeper, nothing greater. It's just a series of choices that give our lives structure, meaning. But enough of that. The following tale is told from the perspective of a woman whose self-generated purpose is most grim, and, even for me, having read many stories from the vault already, it is shocking, and I do hope it is merely fiction, and not an account of historical events. There are places that society has left to rot, and I am the sole inhabitant of one such place. Well, that is to say that I am the only inhabitant who is not bedridden. I was born in the isolated monastery of White Tadrum, which was a home for those dedicated to the Tadromaic philosophy of assymbolism, the belief that all things assemble to the form they are for a specific singular purpose. There is no meaning outside of that purpose, and once it is fulfilled, life becomes a book with no story. It is better to set the book aside and relinquish one's life than to continue reading what contains no substance. Or, according to my master, one could retire to the monastery until their life expired, and if they were lucky, the remnants of purpose might trickle down to their soul in the form of teaching others the path of non-pursuit. People like me. At 5 years old, I began my tutelage beneath my master, the abbot, who taught me not only to accept that we cannot make our destiny, but we cannot lure it, will it, or escape it. It simply is. He taught me that one day, as I age and grow, it would strike me, and whether I pursued it or not, or even realized it was upon me, I would indulge my calling. In the shadows of my room during that time, I would stay up long into the night, meditating and daydreaming. I would imagine what I might become. One day, through no propulsion of my own, I would step out from the walls of this monastery and not return, walking toward a destination I could not visualize or inhibit myself from reaching. My master taught me that I would find my purpose one day. And found it I have. At the age of 15, I, like every monk before me, left the monastery to embark upon a year's journey across Silverwind. We were to learn as much as possible, to never deny an opportunity, whatever it may be, and if the currents of life kept us away from the monastery for longer, we were to swim with them, never against. This is how reality assembled, how nature took shape. Destiny would find us, not the other way around. When or if we returned, we were to meditate during all of our waking hours until our minds settled on a memory from the journey. This memory would be our purpose, and in turn, be that which guided the remainder of our lives until it was seen through to completion. It could be anything, from tending a garden to raising a child. Whatever our minds settled on and remembered the fondest was the destiny we were meant to fulfill, the pursuit we were meant to follow. And exactly 15 years ago, my own mind settled, though I can't say my master would agree with its decision. During my year apart from the monastery, I encountered a stranger while seeking shelter in a mountainside cave. I sat by firelight as he emerged from the shadows behind me, a dragonish sorcerer, and, according to him, he had been searching for a rare crystal deep within the mountain. A hard storm sealed us within the cave, and because of that, we spoke at length, which caused me to address something I had never considered before, the practice of magic. By no means was magic forbidden by the Tadramaic monks. In fact, nothing was forbidden, but due to my isolation in the monastery, I lacked the knowledge of just how powerful magic could be. The sorcerer showed me. With a wave of his hand, he was able to make every stone around us levitate. This he followed with an incantation, a basic 3-syllable chant that began a masterful transformation, causing the stones to change shape into that of soulless, floating heads. Mounds of loose dirt began to form underneath them, which boiled up into the shape of bodies. After this, the heads and bodies joined together, and the newly born golems began to wander the cave with no direction or purpose. One even disappeared in the shadows, traveling to an unknown depth in the cave. The sorcerer assured me they had no mind. He described them as animated for a brief period, and that they would do nothing apart from drift. A golem could have no purpose unless given one by its master. They existed, yes, but they weren't real. They weren't alive. This is when he told me more about the crystal he was searching for. It formed over thousands of years from spilled blood that congealed, hardened, and was put under intense pressure. According to him, it was typically found near shrines and altars where sacrifices were made long ago, and the cave we were in just happened to contain one such altar. His reason for seeking this out was unknown, so I asked him, why would he go to such great lengths to retrieve the crystal? His answer was simple. He pointed to one of the golems and said, "To give them life." Suddenly, the golem's time expired as it crumpled to a pile of dust on the cave floor, and it was that exact moment my mind settled on during my meditations at the monastery. That moment, when the golem faded away, contained my destiny, my purpose, and I understand that now. He went on to tell me that he had his doubts the magic could even work, but after meeting me, he trusted that it would. My fascination with the idea and eagerness to learn must have rekindled his faith. I suppose I was quite childlike in my interest. After that night, I never saw the dragonish sorcerer again, and I left that cave full of intrigue and continued my journey. Now I am at the monastery, where I am content to stay for the rest of my time on Silverwind, and, based on recent events, I may be forced to stay whether I choose to or not. An illness has befallen my brethren at White Tadrum, a poison that causes staggering weakness, followed by a high fever and immobility. It started with one, then spread to all over the course of a month, and as for now, I am the only one strong enough to function. Apart from myself, there are 12 monks residing within this temple, and at this point, all of them except my master are in a state of catatonia, meaning they can't move, speak, eat, or perform any kind of movement of their own volition. I take care of them. I feed them, bathe them. I listen to them barely force the most quiet whimpers at night. It's a miserable existence for them, especially since they are still conscious and awake, but I am here, and I am resolute in my duties now. As I enter my master's bedchamber, I hear him coughing weakly, and I slide the door shut behind me. His once bright and kind face is now soulless, without joy. Most of his hair is gone, and as for his skin, it's pale and clammy. I bring a washcloth and bowl, and begin to bathe him. His tired eyes land on me, out of focus. "Just leave," he says. "You shouldn't be here." I smile and continue washing him. "Don't be silly. I'm not going anywhere." "But why?" "Because, master," I explain. "I found my purpose just like you taught me to do." He resigns himself to my decision and looks away as I hold his arm out, place the bowl beneath it, and cut his wrist. Blood begins pouring like a string of sap, pooling in the wooden vessel. After the task is done, I patch the wound and take the blood away, leaving him in the room alone as I head to the undercroft of the monastery. Night sprinkles the sky above me with stars, and my breath creates a mist inside the cold. My feet patter on the cobblestone, softly reminding me that I'm the only person here. The only person that isn't at death's door, that is. The rest of them are hardly alive. But as I reach the entrance to the undercroft, I remember that soon the monastery will be more lively than ever. In actuality, it will be thriving like never before. I ascend along a cold and damp stairwell to be greeted with a laboratory at the bottom. Shelves line the walls, filled with jars of chemicals on each shelf, most of which contain blood, and I pour the bowl's contents into another jar, the last one, in fact. The next room sits behind a sealed metal door brimming with intense heat that, even from where I'm standing, is akin to the warmth beneath a heavy blanket. I twist its metal handle and step inside, where the furnace, press, and chemical mixer are located. For 14 years I've built this laboratory. For 14 long, exhilarating years I've studied, practiced, read, and experimented. And now I think I've succeeded where the dragonish sorcerer I met in the cave that night long ago never could. He spent years hunting for the sanguine crystals left behind by prehistoric sacrificial offerings, when he could have just made them himself. Yes, it's a difficult, abhorrent process, and a crystal the size of one's fingernail requires an entire bucket of blood. But even so, time is all it requires. Creating the crystals is only half the job, however. As the theory goes, one must enchant them, attune them to the thrumming wavelength of another creature, the spiritual heartbeat, one could say, and finally merge them with the physical body. The procedure goes even further, as the crystal's life essence must then be fused with that faint pulse of life that's always begging to see the light of day. And when the soul emerges, it must quickly be caged and sealed within the body. The mind arises from the framework set in place, and with that mind comes sentience, free will, intellect, and emotion. At least this is what I think will occur. After all my efforts, it would be a shame to fail so late in the process. For most sorcerers, it's widely believed that magic of this scale is impossible. And even if it isn't, the creation of life is frowned upon. That's why the dragonish sorcerer I met tried to garner his materials through an ethical means that made the ritual more digestible, in case those around him found out. But I have no such compulsions. I believe in purpose, destiny, fate, and right now I am doing what I was placed on this world to do. I yearn to live as I am supposed to. For the next 2 days I spend all my time in the Undercroft, suffering the painstaking process of making new crystals, until again I find myself in my master's chamber, seeing him for the last time prior to his departure from life. The other monks have already passed. As I sit next to his bed calmly, hands resting over my lap, he breathes in and out weakly, on the ledge of death, but not quite falling over. "You don't yet understand," he murmurs, "but I pray that one day you will." "Don't understand what?" I ask him. He answers me bluntly. "The truth. Your whole life has been wrapped in safe padding, and when you left the monastery, reality stripped it away. Yet even now you don't see what's right in front of you. You don't see what you are." What am I supposed to see? Am I not living with purpose? Isn't this how I'm meant to live? You are proud of me, aren't you? Proud? Look in a mirror, dear. Your purpose isn't to harm us. I know you believe otherwise, or perhaps you don't understand the gravity of your actions. But you're not meant for this. Still, I will say just as I always have. Whatever you do, I will look on you with love. And because of that, I now ask you, do you bleed? I scrunch my eyes. Bleed? What do you mean, Master? He emphasizes the question. Do you bleed? With all the blood I've taken from him, he's likely losing his mind and is suffering from a bout of delirium. He is at death's door, after all. I'm surprised he's maintained a conversation this whole time. But now that I think back, I don't recall ever bleeding in my life. I don't know what pain feels like. Is it cold? Hot? Does Master feel it? What is it like? I start to answer him, but he asks me another question before I can. What about food? Can you tell me what it tastes like? What anything tastes like? I laugh, then scratch the back of my head, attempting to take the question seriously. Master, you know what food tastes like. It's all the same. Everything tastes like sand. You're not hungry, are you? His next action is to lick his dry and chapped lips and to take a full, wheezing breath. Do you understand why you're here? He asks. To create life. That's my purpose, isn't it? You taught me to pursue whatever my mind won't let go. No, dear. I've always wanted you to live your life, not take life away from others. Though I'm not surprised that creating life is your deepest wish when you are empty by your very nature. Your heart yearns to be alive like the rest of us. You're not making any sense, Master. I am alive. How could I not be? almost alive, but not quite. There is still something you lack. What he's saying makes no sense to me, and I express this by seeking an explanation. What do you mean? But he ignores my question and asks another of his own. Where is your family? He's basically rambling at this point, saying nonsensical things and asking whatever question pops into his head. At least, I think that's the case. Suddenly it hits me. I don't have a family. I've never had one. Why? Do I have siblings? Has anyone ever called me their sister? Why have I never met my mother and father? Where are they? And now that I think about it, why is it that I'm the only woman in the monastery? I rub my forehead in confusion. I was born here, Master. You already know this. I never knew my family. He swallows, takes his time, and responds. Because you never had one. You are an anomaly, dear. Just speak to me plainly, Master, I prod. Enough of this. Tell me what you mean. He coughs and does as I asked. More than 30 years ago, I did to you what you're attempting to do now. Do you understand? I brought you into this world. I made you. I raised you. I built this monastery for you. The Tadramaic Order doesn't exist. We're just researchers, dear. Sorcerers, diviners, scientists. You were just dirt and stone, but through the same process you're engineering right now, we brought you to life. We gave you a mind, emotions, personality. But we needed a way to guide you, to force you to find the purpose for yourself, and to train your mind to seek it with no prompt outside from your own desires. That was our greatest hurdle. Golems have no free will, but you do. And now, the one thing you lack is an understanding of how valuable life truly is. On instinct, I smile, knowing that it's all a delusion in his mind. But he doesn't waver, take it back, or continue rambling. He just lays there, allowing me to absorb his words like a cloth to soak up water. Soon my smile melts into a gaze of horror, and I rapidly stand up, causing the wooden chair to screech as it slides back. My eyes widen and my pupils grow. He has to be lying. It has to be a trick or something. A game. What are you talking about? I'm human like you are. I'm a little different, but I'm not a golem. I've always been different. His reply is weaker than those previous, and I can tell his time has finally come. The truth is inescapable, dear, and when I'm gone, I pray that you keep finding purpose for yourself. And one day, when you stumble into morality, remember this. I forgive you. I want you to live, even if you don't know how. And please, if you can, forgive me for all the years I've lied to you. I begin to panic, shouting at him as I try to understand. I scream for him to wait. I try to get him water. I tremble as I attempt to provide medicine. But as the life fades from his eyes, it becomes clear that he's left this world and isn't coming back. Why would he spend his dying breaths lying to me like this? Why would he tell me something so outlandish? Before tending to his body, I rush out of the room and across the courtyard, entering my own bedchamber on the far side. There's a mirror, one I've used since I was a child, and I stand before it now, confused and terrified. My skin is just like everyone else's, though it's smooth and young. My eyes are bright, worn by more than a lifeless shell, and when I touch my face, my hand is cold, the same as it's always been. I'm a person, I'm human, that much is clear. But why am I different? Master's body is warm, mine is not. His flesh is soft, mine is hard like clay. He bleeds, yet I never have. I haven't been wounded, felt pain, sorrow, or even fear. Not until now, that is. This emotion that has come over me is completely new, and after I stare at myself in the mirror, I reach into a drawer nearby and grab a dull knife from within. Without hesitation, I press the knife to my wrist and cut deeply, yet nothing spills out. I hardly feel it. It's barely more than a sensation of pressure on my skin. But that's always been normal for me, because I'm not like everyone else. I'm unique. I was abandoned by my parents for a reason, left at the monastery because I wasn't like other children. And even if I don't bleed, it's not because I'm a golem. I'm just different. And though I have no idea why Master insisted on filling my head with lies during our last moments together, I know at least one thing is true. I have a purpose. I'm not some mindless statue who only moves because someone else forced it to come alive. Part 2. The journey he embarked on 30 years ago was still unfinished, yet he persisted in chasing it, a daily choice that led him across Silverwind in search of the knowledge, material, and magic needed to create life. To do so was the goal of Milbus Turin. He had seen it once before, a woman taking shelter in a mountain cave, seemingly unaware that she wasn't human. She looked like one, acted like one, and experienced the world like one, but regardless of how closely she resembled a person, the fact of the matter was that she was a golem. Someone created her, taught her, raised her, and now he had discerned who that someone was and where to find them. If possible, Milbus wanted to learn how the process was completed, then study the golem as well. And he had every intention of bringing that to fruition as to achieve the same, or an even greater, feat of magic. And it was that intention that brought him to the wilderness again. The monastery of White Tadrim lingered on the outskirts of society, in a place forgotten by most. It was home to hardly a dozen monks, and they produced their own food, made their own clothes, and to occupy their isolated lives, they upheld the Tadrimaic philosophy, a set of beliefs and practices of which little was known. Among these monks was the abbot, a man responsible for creating a living golem. His name, however, remained unknown. Milbus arrived at the monastery at midday after hiking an unused and overgrown trail through the forests, and from outside its towering walls, he was stunned by the silence in the area. There were no voices, no ambient noises of the wilderness, and no wind. Like standing in a room of stopped clocks, time seemed to quit moving in that place, as if it wasn't worth the effort of forward motion. When he entered through its main gate, again Milbus was surprised. He saw nobody. Its courtyard lay empty, yet while meandering through the grounds, he saw a well-tended garden and an open shrine, and he could smell wood burning. Then he came to a sudden halt upon seeing a stone pyre, upon which a fire blazed like a trough of ignited oil. It stunk, rancid with the smell of death as he stood nearby, and behind it, like a phantom in the smoke, stood a young woman. Milbus was caught off guard, and he stepped back, squinting his eyes, peering through the smoke. Then, poking up from the flames, he saw a skeletal hand that was rapidly burning away, meaning this must have been a funeral. From that moment forward he lingered in silence until the flames died out. Then he watched as the woman, whom he recognized as the golem years before, raked the ashes into a pail, which she then carried off to a nearby cellar. To that place he followed her. In the cellar he found that which he hoped for, the woman from before. However, it was the room itself that left him dumbfounded. There were deep red crystals scattered all over, spellbooks stacked in tall piles, an odorous smell like decay, and the floor and walls had a burnt umber coloration stuck to them like a smoke-ravaged shack. The woman had just emerged from another door and closed it behind her when she finally addressed his presence with a kind smile. "Hello," she said. "I'm sorry, but I was tending to a dear friend. Welcome to White Tadrim. What can I do for you?" Indeed, it was the girl from years ago, and she still looked quite youthful. "You do remember me, don't you?" Milbus asked. "We met when you were much younger. I stumbled upon your campground in the mountains." She looked confused at first, but narrowed her eyes at him. Then the memory struck like the startled expression across her face. "Please forgive me, but I didn't recognize you. It's been so long." She gestured to a nearby chair and table, which he casually declined to use. "Please, sir, tell me what brings you here," she insisted. He obliged. "To speak with the abbot. It would be a pleasure to visit privately with him. Is he presently at the monastery?" She nodded. "Yes, of course." The door next to her squeaked open. "In fact, here he is now. We don't get many visitors, so I'm sure he's more than happy to meet you." What Milbus saw next was both bewildering and horrifying, for he knew what spell and science was applied, and how it failed, but he couldn't grasp why it was attempted by such an inexperienced practitioner of magic. A man not of flesh, not of clay or stone, but of ash stepped out from the other room, and a red gem gaped from his powdery white chest as his body left ashen residue on every surface he touched. He was hairless, unclothed, and in a constant state of disrepair. To maintain such a monstrosity would have required far too many resources and lives. Why would she do it? Unless, of course, she didn't care for the consequences or simply couldn't understand them. "The pleasure is mine," said the abbot through a lifeless, ghostly moan. His voice sounded old, on its deathbed, and void of emotion. "But if you seek answers, I have none. I am not the man I used to be, and I cannot provide you with information pertaining to life beyond these walls. They are all I've ever known. Now, what is your business with the Tadrimaic order?"